Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa. I'm Clarisse Fortuné. Coming up on our program, Assimi Goïta addresses the nation in a first video appearance since coordinated attacks hit Mali. He said the situation was under control and called for unity. The military leader had previously met Russia's ambassador amid reports of jihadist and Tuareg advances in northern Mali. In Nigeria, Islamic State says it carried out an attack in Adamawa state that killed at least 29 people, the latest in a series of deadly assaults by extremist group linked to Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. And from Mali and Nigeria to Iran and Lebanon, global crises continue to dominate headlines. But amid the conflicts in the Middle East and elsewhere, there are concerns that the war in Sudan is being forgotten. Mali's military leader Assimi Goïta has re-emerged in public for the first time since Saturday's wave of coordinated attacks that struck the country. In a recorded video, Goïta addressed the nation, declaring the situation in Mali was under control, calling on the population to stay united.
As I speak, security measures have been stepped up.
La situation est maîtrisée.
The situation is under control, and search operations, intelligence gathering, and security operations are continuing.
And Goïta's office had earlier released images showing the military leader meeting the Russian ambassador after Moscow said earlier in the day that it wanted stability in Mali. Meanwhile, reports indicate that jihadist fighters and Tuareg separatists were advancing in northern Mali. Fulani Aina is a peace, security and development lecturer at SOAS. He told us earlier what to make of Assimi Goïta's first appearance with the Russians since the attacks.
It simply reflects Mali's strategy under Goïta, which has mostly been to reinforce or reemphasize the use of military approaches to solving the security crisis in Mali at the expense of a prioritization of other non-military efforts, that have serious consequences for peace and security. For instance, the need to address the underlying root causes of the protracted conflict in the region. And so what we've seen again is a determined effort, to intensify military approaches, which has only had the unintended consequence, unfortunately, of contributing to the protractedness of the conflict. It doesn't necessarily solve the problem. In fact, on the other hand, the data shows that Mali continues to struggle in its effort, to regain peace and security in the country. Right now, because Mali is a member of the AES, the Alliance of Sahelian States, it's only expected that he would begin to, court these other member states to potentially support him in his quest to try to regain control of Mali. But unfortunately, the stark reality is that these other countries are equally struggling in themselves. They don't have the necessary equipment that's required to wage the kind of war we're seeing in the Sahel, which is mostly irregular warfare, unlike conventional warfare. Also, they lack the number of troops, because currently the military in Mali is overstretched, as we've also seen, which is the case across the AES states, whether it's in Burkina Faso or in Niger. So the optics aren't looking very good for Goïta at the moment, and so his best option, rather, might be to consider leveraging whatever relationship he's had left with ECOWAS on the one hand, and also potentially rekindling his relationship with the West, on the other hand. But to completely rely on Russia, as we've seen in the past, hasn't necessarily helped him to regain control of the country. Unfortunately, the data has shown, that Mali has lost more territory and has also continued to struggle in its quest, to gain peace and security.
And Saturday's unprecedented attacks were carried out by an alliance of Al-Qaeda-linked jihadists and Tuareg separatists. The Jenim group has expanded in recent years, and its leader, Iyad Ghali, is the most wanted man in Mali. The French military, Malian authorities, and Russian mercenaries have all sought in vain to capture him. So who is Iyad Ghali? His portrait by Hélène Gainsford.
Head of the Al-Qaeda-linked group Jenim, he's one of the most wanted men in Mali. The French military, Malian authorities and Russian mercenaries have all sought in vain to capture Iyad Ghali. Born in 1958 in a Tuareg village in the northeast of Mali, he's a member of the Ifugas tribe. He first took up arms for the Islamic Legion, a pan-Islamist force created by former Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi. Ghali returned to Mali at the end of the 1980s, where he founded the separatist group, the Azawad National Liberation Movement. He became close to the musicians of the group Tinariwen and was said to enjoy smoking and drinking whiskey. After launching a Tuareg rebellion in June 1990, he signed a peace accord with the Malian army the following year, before moving to the capital Bamako to become an advisor to former President Alpha Oumar Konaré. Over the next 2 decades, he adopted a more radical vision of Islam under the influence of Pakistani preachers. And in 2012, he founded the Sunni Islamist militant group Ansar Dine, controlling much of northern Mali and the cities Timbuktu, Gao and Kidal. His fighters enforced Sharia law, cutting off hands, stoning women and flogging children. For these acts, Iyad Ghali is the subject of an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court for war crimes and crimes against humanity. The French military intervention, Operation Serval, halted the jihadists' advance. Iyad Ghali disappeared in the desert, but his group continued to strike and to grow stronger. In 2017, Ansar Dine merged with several organizations under the banner Jenim, a multi-ethnic group with links to Al-Qaeda. The Tuareg veteran was chosen to lead the coalition. Since then, Iyad Ghali and his men have only strengthened their influence, to the point of threatening the very existence of the Malian state.
And Nigeria was also hit by violence over the weekend. The Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for an attack that left at least 29 people dead in Adamawa State, northeast Nigeria. Sunday's attack is the latest in a string of deadly attacks carried out in Nigeria by armed groups, including those with links to IS and Al-Qaeda. Sam Olukoya has more.
The attack in Goyaku village in Adamawa State was timed for Sunday evening, when a large crowd had gathered to watch a football match between 2 villages. After carrying out the killings, the attackers remained in the area for several hours, burning places of worship, classrooms, houses, and other valuable properties. Goyaku village, scene of the attack, is further south of Borno State, where jihadists have concentrated most of their deadly attacks in northeast Nigeria. The attack shows how Nigeria's expansive northeast has become vulnerable to killings by armed groups. The incident also shows how civilians have become vulnerable to jihadist attacks as various groups step up their violent campaign for the introduction of Islamic rule in Nigeria. Since the jihadist group Boko Haram started its violent campaign for an Islamic State about 16 years ago, Nigeria has seen a dramatic rise in the number of jihadist groups. Some of these are affiliated to Al-Qaeda, while some others are linked to the Islamic State group. The JNIM, which carried out weekend's deadly attacks in Mali, has also expanded its operations to Nigeria through the country's porous borders with Niger Republic. Authorities have not achieved much success in addressing the growing insecurity.
And meanwhile, the latest war in the Middle East is having far-reaching consequences, including for countries already ravaged by conflict. Few have been hit harder than Sudan. The fighting has disrupted vital shipping routes, cutting off food and medical supplies, and worsening a humanitarian crisis for millions who are already struggling to survive. Patrick Youssef, the ICRC's regional director for Africa, told me earlier how badly Sudan's health system has been affected by the conflict.
Every facet of life, in fact, has been affected, and this has been eroding, the existence, the foundations of civilian life, and hence health is one of the prices that civilians have paid simply because of the infrastructure that has been highly damaged, because of the displacement also of hundreds and if not millions of people, including health staff, that were either threatened in insecurity or had to leave because of different other reasons. And hence, this has weakened very drastically the health response in Sudan and has pushed other organizations, including the Red Cross, but also local organizations, to increase their health support for internal displaced, but also for the refugees on the other side of the border. And
obviously, we've been covering the situation in Mali, in Iran, in Lebanon. So how does these headlines affect your work in Sudan?
Well, this is, first, the impact of the Middle East crisis is quite grand. Again, it does affect all African countries, 38 of which are net importers of oil. That affects, obviously, logistics, pipelines, and it does impact the capacities of organizations that are quite overwhelmed by the sheer number of needs in a country like Sudan, with, again, high numbers, increasing needs, one that indeed looks at what can be prioritized. And in this case, it's the water response, providing health and assistance to civilians. But let's not forget, Sudan is mainly a protection crisis. People feel unsafe to live in many parts of the country, and hence it is through the respect of international humanitarian law that we see a minimizing effect on people's lives, but that unfortunately was not the case in Sudan.
And the conflict has now entered its fourth year. Would you say that the situation has evolved either way, stabilized maybe, or actually getting worse?
Oh, certainly it's getting worse. 3 years on, the price of inaction is quite grand. Again, as I said before, this is shaking the very foundation of civilian life, and again, informing the humanitarian response, which is quite still limited because, again, of insecurity and constrained finances worldwide. And that, again, puts additional strain. So it is developing in a way that is certainly not good for the population. There are certainly more severe malnutrition in many parts of the country. And again, there are moving front lines. With the use of drones and other technologies, this adds additional strain on civilian lives.
Talks about Sudan, concluding this edition of Eye on Africa. Thank you for watching.
To understand the world, you need to be immersed in it. From Jakarta to Beirut, by way of Kinshasa, Kyiv and Washington, France 24 correspondents are everywhere. 200 correspondents living near you. Their mission? Keeping you informed wherever you are in the world at all times. Objective, reliable, trustworthy, independent information. Checking facts, exposing fake news. France 24. We're here, there, and everywhere. Keeping you informed.